I remember the way the hallway light spilled into our bedroom the night it all started. My stitches were still raw, and the morphine haze dulled everything but the sound of her giggle. Not with me. Through half-lidded eyes, I caught a shadow slipping past the door frame, headed to the guest room. The creak of that bed I built with my own hands confirmed it. She thought I was too dope to notice, too broken to fight back. But I heard it all, even the way she whispered to her best friend on the phone the next morning. Taking care of a vegetable makes you crave real meat. That was the moment my recovery began, not just from surgery, but from her. The worst part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was the realization that while I lay there, vulnerable and in pain, the woman who had promised to stand by me, in sickness and in health, was making a mockery of our vows just down the hall. The doctors had warned me about complications from the surgery, about physical pain and lengthy recovery. No one warned me about this, the shattering of trust that hurt worse than any surgical incision. We'd been married for 11 years, 11 years of building a life, of weathering storms together. I was there when her first boutique failed, holding her as she cried over the bankruptcy paperwork. I was the one who drove her mother to chemotherapy appointments when Sandra couldn't bear to see her own mother so frail. I was the one who got up at 3 a.m. with our colicky daughter so she could sleep. I was the one who stayed, always. Sandra had a way of drawing people in. Her smile, her laugh, the way she could make you feel like you were the only person in the room. That's what had captivated me when we met at my cousin's wedding. She was vivacious, ambitious, and seemed to genuinely care about people. We moved fast, dating for 8 months, engaged for 4, and then married in a garden ceremony where she teared up reading her vows. I can still remember the words, "I promise to be your rock when you need strength, your comfort when you need rest, and your partner in all of life's adventures." Hollow words, as it turns out. Our life together wasn't perfect, but whose is? We had 2 beautiful children, Emma, now 9, and Tyler, 6. We had the 4-bedroom colonial in a good school district. We hosted neighborhood barbecues and went on annual family vacations to the beach. I thought we were happy. I thought we were solid. Then came the hernia, a complication from helping my brother move a piano into his new house. What started as discomfort became excruciating pain, and the diagnosis was clear: a massive abdominal wall tear that required immediate surgery. The doctor warned me about the 6-week recovery period, the limitations on movement, the temporary dependence I'd have on others. Sandra assured me it would be fine. "This is what marriage is all about," she said, squeezing my hand before they wheeled me into surgery. "Taking care of each other. You've always been there for me. Now it's my turn." The first few days after coming home from the hospital are still a blur of pain medication and fitful sleep. Sandra seemed attentive enough, bringing me water, helping me to the bathroom, making sure I took my pills on schedule. But looking back, I can see the signs I missed. The irritated sighs when I asked for something, the growing time she spent on her phone, the way she'd leave the room to take calls. By the end of the first week, the pattern was clear. She'd give me my evening pain medication, a dose that knocked me out cold, and then she'd vanish for hours. At first, I thought she was just taking breaks, maybe watching TV downstairs or calling friends for support. Then came that night when I woke up earlier than expected, the medication wearing off before its usual time. That's when I heard it. Laughter, whispers, the unmistakable sounds of intimacy coming from our guest room. I wanted to get up, to confront them, to demand answers, but my body betrayed me. I could barely sit up without searing pain tearing through my abdomen. I lay there, helpless, listening to my wife betray me with someone in our own home while I was incapacitated from surgery. The next morning, she acted normal, bringing me toast and coffee as if nothing had happened. I watched her with new eyes. The slight flush to her cheeks, the way she avoided direct eye contact, the faint smell of unfamiliar cologne that clung to her robe. I said nothing. What could I say? I had no proof, just suspicion and the ache of betrayal in my chest that rivaled the pain of my surgical wound. Then came the phone call. Sandra was in the kitchen, thinking I was asleep after my morning medication. The walls in our house were never thick. "God, Tiff, it's exhausting," she said to her best friend. "You have no idea what it's like. Taking care of a vegetable makes you crave real meat." They laughed. They laughed at me, at my vulnerability, at my pain. "Mark's been a godsend," she continued, lowering her voice slightly. "He comes over after the kids are asleep, and honestly, it's the only thing keeping me sane right now. David's going to be laid up for at least another month. I can't wait that long." Mark. So that was his name. I searched my memory. Was he a coworker? Someone from her gym? I couldn't place him, but it didn't matter. What mattered was that my wife was sleeping with someone else while I recovered from major surgery, in our home, just down the hall from where I lay helpless. That phone call changed everything. The pain in my abdomen became secondary to the pain in my heart, but with that pain came clarity. I needed to get better, not just for myself, but to deal with this betrayal properly. Not with rage or impulsiveness, but with calculation and precision. Over the next few days, I became the model patient. I took my medication without complaint, did my breathing exercises diligently, and even started light physical therapy exercises ahead of schedule. Sandra seemed relieved at my improved mood, mistaking my focus for acceptance of my situation. Little did she know that every repetition of my abdominal exercises was fueled by determination, not just to heal my body, but to prepare for what was coming. The signs of her affair became more obvious as my medication decreased and my awareness increased. Unexplained absences, late nights at work, the constant ding of text messages she'd quickly hide, wine glasses in the sink from nights I'd been asleep, and once, a man's watch on our bathroom counter that disappeared before I could mention it. 3 weeks after my surgery, when Sandra thought I was napping, I managed to get hold of her unlocked phone while she was in the shower. The text messages confirmed everything. "Miss you already. Can't wait for tonight." "Is he asleep? I can come earlier if you want." "Don't worry, babe. He's knocked out cold, doors unlocked." Each message was like a knife twisting in my gut, but I didn't let emotion overtake me. Instead, I took photos of the conversations with my own phone, carefully replaced hers, and began planning. My first call was to Marcus, my oldest friend. We'd been close since college, and he'd gone on to a career in military intelligence before starting his own private security firm. If anyone could help me document this betrayal properly, it was him. "Jesus, Dave," he said when I told him everything. "That's beyond cold." "I need proof," I told him. "Not just for the divorce, but for myself. I need to know the full extent of what's happening in my own home." 2 days later, Marcus came by under the pretense of checking on me as an old friend. Sandra was polite but clearly annoyed by the intrusion. While she made coffee in the kitchen, Marcus quickly and efficiently installed 3 hidden cameras, one in the hallway leading to the guest room, one in the living room, and one in the guest room itself. All were motion-activated, with audio capabilities and cloud storage that only I could access. "You sure about this?" Marcus asked before leaving. "What you find might be worse than what you imagine." "I need to know the truth," I said. "All of it." The truth, as it turned out, was even uglier than I had imagined. The cameras captured everything over the next 2 weeks. Mark was indeed from her work, a new marketing director who had started just before my surgery. The footage showed them coming in late at night, sometimes bringing takeout and wine, laughing on our couch while watching shows we used to watch together. It captured their kisses, their hurried movements to the guest room, and worst of all, their conversations about me. "How much longer is he going to be laid up?" Mark asked one night. "At least another few weeks," Sandra sighed. "The doctor says he's recovering well, but he's still pretty useless around the house." "What are you going to do when he's better?" I don't know, she said, and the casual way she discussed our future made my blood run cold. I've been thinking about it a lot. We've been growing apart for years, honestly. This situation just made it clearer. Growing apart? Or you growing beyond him? Mark asked with a smirk. Maybe both, she laughed. He's a good father, but as a husband, I don't know. I want more excitement, more passion, less predictability. Well, I'm happy to provide that, Mark said, pulling her close. I watched the footage with a detachment that surprised me. The pain was there, certainly, but it was overshadowed by a cold, clear resolve. This woman, this stranger who wore my wife's face, had not only betrayed our vows, but was actively planning to discard me once I had served my purpose as the stable provider and father to our children. Not if I moved first. As my physical strength returned, so did my determination. I began making phone calls when Sandra was out, to our bank, to a lawyer recommended by Marcus, to our children's school. I gathered documents, statements, records of our life together. And I kept watching the footage, documenting every betrayal, every cruel word, every misuse of our joint funds when she took Mark to hotels using our shared credit card. 5 weeks after my surgery, I was mobile enough to visit a divorce attorney while Sandra thought I was at physical therapy. Barbara Winters was known for her ruthless efficiency in handling betrayal cases, and she didn't disappoint. This is substantial evidence, she said, reviewing the footage and financial records I'd compiled. Infidelity, emotional cruelty, misuse of marital assets. The court will take a very dim view of her actions, especially given the circumstances of your surgery and recovery. I want full custody of our children, I said firmly. They deserve better than what she's shown herself to be. With this evidence, we have a strong case, but there's more we can do to strengthen it before filing. Are you prepared for that? I nodded. Whatever it takes. The next phase of my plan required precision timing and iron control over my emotions. I returned home and continued to play the role of the recovering husband, gradually taking on more household responsibilities, engaging more with the children, and giving Sandra no reason to suspect what was coming. I quietly arranged for Emma and Tyler to begin seeing a child therapist, explaining to the school and the therapist that their mother's behavior had become erratic and that I wanted to ensure they had professional support for what might be coming. I changed their emergency contact information at school, removing Sandra's best friend Tiffany and replacing her with Marcus. I documented every time Sandra chose to be with Mark over attending the children's activities or helping with their homework. All the while, the cameras kept recording. Sandra grew bolder, having Mark over earlier in the evenings, barely bothering to hide their relationship. One particularly damning night, they shared a bottle of champagne in our living room to celebrate Mark's promotion, a celebration that should have included me as her husband. Instead, I watched from my phone as they toasted to new beginnings and exciting changes. Our wedding anniversary was approaching, 11 years since she had made those false promises. It seemed fitting to choose that day for what came next. The morning of our anniversary, I got up early and made breakfast for the children, helping them get ready for school as Sandra slept in. I packed their lunches with notes telling them how much I loved them. I drove them to school myself, hugging them a little longer than usual at drop-off. When I returned home, Sandra was up, scrolling through her phone at the kitchen counter. "Happy anniversary," I said, placing a small wrapped box in front of her. She looked surprised, then guilty. "Oh, happy anniversary. I'm sorry. With everything going on, I didn't get a chance to get you anything." "That's okay," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Open it." Inside the box was a USB drive with a simple label. While I slept down the hall, she looked confused. "What's this?" "Our marriage, as it really is," I said. "You might want to watch it before our meeting this afternoon." "What meeting?" "With Barbara Winters, my attorney. She's expecting us at 2. The color drained from Sandra's face. Your attorney? David, what are you talking about? I placed another envelope on the counter. Divorce papers and a motion for full custody of Emma and Tyler. She stared at me, shock replacing confusion. This isn't funny. It's not meant to be, I said, my voice still calm. Neither was sleeping with Mark in our guest room while I was recovering from surgery. Neither was calling me a vegetable to your friends. Neither was using our joint account to fund hotel rooms for your affair. You've been spying on me? Her voice rose with indignation. I've been protecting myself, I corrected her. There's a difference. This is insane, she sputtered. You can't just decide to end our marriage like this. I didn't decide to end our marriage, I said, finally allowing a hint of anger to color my words. You did that when you brought another man into our home while I was at my most vulnerable. You did that when you mocked me to your friends. You did that when you betrayed every promise you ever made to me. She tried to argue, to justify, to minimize what she'd done. When that didn't work, she moved to tears, to pleas for another chance, to reminders of our history together. I listened without response, watching the performance with detached interest. The meeting is at 2, I repeated when she finally ran out of words. You can bring the USB drive with you if you want to see what evidence will be presented in court. Or don't. Either way, I'll be there. I turned and walked out of the house, leaving her staring at the small device that contained the unvarnished truth of her betrayal. Barbara's office was intentionally intimidating, all dark wood and leather, with certificates and court victories displayed prominently on the walls. I arrived early, as planned, and waited in calm silence. Sandra arrived 10 minutes late, her eyes red-rimmed, accompanied by a man I recognized as Robert Chen, a family law attorney known for representing wealthy clients in contentious divorces. Mr. Wu charges $500 an hour, Barbara whispered to me. She's serious about fighting this. So are we, I replied. The meeting was brief and devastating for Sandra. Barbara methodically presented the evidence, footage of the affair, timestamps and locations, bank statements showing expenditures at hotels and restaurants with Mark, transcripts of conversations where Sandra mocked my condition and discussed leaving me. Throughout the presentation, Sandra's face cycled through emotions: defiance, shock, shame, and finally, defeat. This is a violation of privacy, Robert attempted, but his heart wasn't in it. The evidence was too overwhelming. Privacy? Barbara scoffed. Your client brought her lover into the marital home while her husband was recovering from major surgery. She used marital assets to fund her affair. She neglected her children to pursue this relationship. The court will take a very dim view of such behavior, especially when deciding custody arrangements. The terms I offered were non-negotiable. Full custody of the children with supervised visitation for Sandra, the house sold and proceeds split according to our prenuptial agreement minus the funds she had spent on her affair, and no spousal support in either direction. This is punitive, Robert argued. This is merciful, Barbara countered. If we take this to court, your client stands to lose much more, including her reputation. The judge we're likely to get is particularly harsh on infidelity cases involving medical vulnerability. In the end, Sandra signed. Not willingly, not happily, but she signed. As we prepared to leave, she tried one last time to speak to me privately. David, please, we can work through this. For the kids, if nothing else. I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since discovering her betrayal. This woman who had once been the center of my world now seemed like a stranger, her familiar features animated by a person I didn't know or trust. I am thinking of the kids, I said quietly. They deserve a parent who understands loyalty and respect, who can teach them about integrity by example, not just words. I made a mistake, she pleaded. No, I corrected her. A mistake is forgetting to pay a bill or burning dinner. What you did was a systematic betrayal that lasted weeks. What you did was a choice. multiple choices, made day after day, to violate our marriage while I was at my most vulnerable. There's no coming back from that. I walked away without looking back, feeling lighter than I had in months. The aftermath unfolded exactly as I had planned. When news of our divorce spread through Sandra's workplace, Mark distanced himself immediately. The formal deposition request that Barbara sent to him, requiring him to testify under oath about the timeline of their relationship, was apparently the final straw. He transferred to another branch of the company within 2 weeks and blocked Sandra's number. Her professional reputation suffered as well. Although I never actively spread the story, the truth has a way of emerging. Her supervisor called me for my side of the story after Sandra began missing work and showing signs of emotional distress. I was factual but comprehensive in my explanation. She was asked to resign shortly thereafter. The children adjusted better than I had feared. The therapy sessions helped, as did my steady presence and honesty. I answered their questions as age-appropriately as possible, never vilifying their mother but never lying about why our family had changed. "Did Mom stop loving you?" Emma asked one night as I tucked her in. "I think Mom and I forgot how to love each other properly," I said carefully. "Sometimes that happens with grown-ups, but it doesn't change how much we both love you and Tyler." Sandra's visitation rights were limited and supervised, a consequence of the evidence showing her prioritizing her affair over the children's needs. She fought this initially, hiring a new attorney and filing motions to amend the custody agreement. But each attempt failed as more evidence came to light. Missed parent-teacher conferences while she was with Mark, an incident where Tyler had fallen and needed stitches, and she couldn't be reached because she was at a hotel. Text messages dismissing the children's activities as boring obligations. Her parents, who had once welcomed me warmly into their family, reached out about 6 months after the divorce was finalized. Sandra's father, a retired judge, asked to meet for coffee. "I want you to know," he said, his voice heavy with disappointment, "that we raised her better than this. What she did to you, it's unforgivable." "I'm just focused on moving forward," I told him. "The kids need stability now." "You'll always be family to us," he insisted. "Sandra's choices don't change that." I sold the colonial house, too many memories, too much space for just the 3 of us most of the time, and bought a modern condo closer to the children's school. It had a pool and a playground that they loved, and enough bedrooms for everyone to have their own space. It became our fresh start, a place untainted by betrayal. Sandra tried various approaches to get back into my life. Tearful phone calls, handwritten letters. Once, she showed up at the condo unannounced, looking thin and desperate. "5 minutes," she begged through the intercom. "Just give me 5 minutes." I didn't buzz her in. Instead, I sent a text. "Any communication needs to go through Barbara. This is the last warning before I file a harassment claim." She left, and the attempts became less frequent after that. A year after the divorce, I ran into Tiffany, Sandra's once best friend, at the grocery store. She tried to avoid me, hurrying down another aisle when she spotted me. I followed, not out of malice but curiosity. "How is she?" I asked simply. Tiffany looked uncomfortable. "Not good. She lost her new job last month. She's been staying with her sister." I nodded, feeling no particular satisfaction but no sympathy either. "For what it's worth," Tiffany added, not meeting my eyes, "I stopped being friends with her after everything. What she did was wrong. I should have said something when I knew, but loyalty to a friend seemed more important than telling an inconvenient truth," I finished for her. She nodded, shame coloring her cheeks. "Well," I said, preparing to push my cart away, "we all make our choices, and we all live with the consequences." As I walked away, I realized that the anger that had once consumed me had faded to something more like indifference. Sandra was now just someone I used to know, a cautionary tale rather than the love of my life. That night, as I helped Emma with her science project and listened to Tyler read his new book aloud, I felt a contentment that had once seemed impossible. My abdominal scar had faded to a thin white line, barely visible now. The emotional scars were healing too. I thought back to that night when it all began, when the hallway light spilled into our bedroom and I heard her giggle. Not with me. I remembered the cruel words that had pushed me to fight. Taking care of a vegetable makes you crave real meat. Well, this vegetable had not only recovered but thrived. Meanwhile, her real meat had vanished at the first sign of trouble, and her carefully constructed life had collapsed around her. I didn't need to hear her voice or see her face to know that my revenge was complete. The proof was in the peaceful home I'd created for my children, in the respect I'd regained by refusing to accept betrayal, in the life I was rebuilding on my own terms. Some might call it cruel, the methodical way I documented her betrayal and used it against her. But I think the true cruelty would have been staying, teaching my children that loyalty means nothing, that vows can be broken without consequence, that it's acceptable to mock and betray those who trust you most when they're at their most vulnerable. Instead, I taught them something different, that self-respect matters, that actions have consequences, and that sometimes the most powerful response to betrayal isn't a dramatic confrontation, but a careful, deliberate reclaiming of your own life. As I turned out the lights in our new home that night, I knew with absolute certainty that I had won the only victory that truly mattered. Not just survival, but genuine freedom from someone who had proven herself unworthy of my trust. And in that freedom, I found peace. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.